So my name is Kachambwa. I am, first of all, I'm a woman, I'm a feminist, I'm Pan-African. I am also the executive director of Femnet, which is the African Women's Development and Communication Network. So Femnet is one of the largest women's network on the continent, and we've been in existence for 28 years. But I'm also a friend, Mimi Dada. I'm a mom of 3 sons, and I'm a wife. I also minister I am a minister as well of the gospel, not a cabinet minister. But I just think for all the titles, for me, you can call me she, her, which are my pronouns. And yeah, that's me, Memory. So I grew up in a small farming community in Zimbabwe, and then I did my primary school as a day scholar, and also my secondary school to O-level, Form 4, and then I went into boarding school. I went to a girls' school when I was doing my Form 1 to Form 4, and that really changed me. I mean, when I was growing up, I was so self-conscious. I used to be teased by boys. You know, they used to tease me because I had a very high forehead. So I had such a low self-esteem because I was also vocal. You know, I always used to challenge boys. I used to fight with boys. I grew up in what you call like a tomboy, so I never saw anything different. I mean, my father, we were 6 girls in our family and only 2 boys. So my father had no choice. Everything he taught us the same. There was so much equality. He encouraged us to speak up all the time. So I really grew up like that. But when I was in primary school, it was quite a difficult time for me. But when I went to a girls-only school, when I went to high school, I thought that was just starting afresh. We were all girls. It built our confidence. I joined so many sports. No one would laugh at me. And I really enjoyed that. And then I went to university. So I studied, I'm a natural scientist by profession. I studied geology, geography, and environmental science. And then I did my second degree, my master's in South Africa, Cape Town, where I studied integrated water resource management, but with a specific focus on water in society, the politics around water, human rights, water as a resource, but also looking at how women's leadership, women in the water sector, their leadership. So I zeroed into that. So my career really started, I started working as a researcher. So every other time with a semester break, I always would go and help as an assistant. I did most of my work within the social sciences for some reason, because I had a lot of friends in the social sciences. So I would, I did some research with the wildlife community. I also did some research with the labor union, and then I moved and graduated after university. My first job was working for an IT company where we're training geographic information systems. So we're a support system. So we're marketing geographic information system way before we had all the Google Maps and everything. So we're also marketing and supporting IT solutions for mining companies and for demining companies. So in Zimbabwe, we have borders with Mozambique, where there were a lot of mines which were planted during the Liberation War. So we did a lot of work with a company which was demining and removing those mines. So we would provide the IT software, maintain it in terms of for them to locate. So I was into IT, which was completely different from what I had studied, but I enjoyed it so much because it had a lot of link with geosciences. And then I taught for a while. I became a teacher, a high school teacher. I was teaching geography at a girls' high school, And coincidentally, at that school, I was also teaching. My younger sister was in that school. It was so difficult for me because, it was the era where, young girls would bring cell phones. I didn't have a cell phone. I was going through a very difficult time in my life. I just had a baby. I didn't have a job. And I went into teaching, but I enjoyed it. So I taught then. From there, I moved in and I worked for the United Nations. So I worked as a program associate on sexual reproductive health and rights, looking at issues of post-abortion care for UNFPA. And then I moved and I worked for UNIFEM, which is now UN Women, where I was coordinating a gender forum, which is like a multi-stakeholder forum for, gender actors, people who are in government, civil society, private and public sector. So I was coordinating that forum. And from then, I can really truly say that's where my whole career shifted. That's when I had a strong focus on gender and development. So I just realized that that was my passion, which I started pursuing everything around working with women, women's empowerment programs, supporting women who are in politics, working with young girls, and also working a lot on issues around sexual reproductive health and rights. So I moved, I worked also for, and I was also a director for an organization called the Women's Trust. So this was a women's leadership organization in Zimbabwe. So it was an institute where we're training women both in private sector, in public sector, in civil society, as well as in government on leadership, feminist leadership. What is feminist leadership? But we worked a lot with communities. We were pushing for a social contract to say, as communities, you must be demanding from your leaders. It was during elections those days, so we're doing a lot of civic education, but with specific, more like a manifesto, a women's manifesto to say, this is what you should demand. This is the accountability you must be demanding. So I worked for this organization, the Women's Trust. There I worked so much with women parliamentarians, women in governance, and I also then moved and I worked for International Youth Foundation, which was really one of my most empowering journeys in my career. Here I was working with young people, and we were working on a program where there was very high unemployment, and we were trying to see how do we get the youth to be employed through technical vocational education and training. And we're also doing a lot of life skills training, and my role there was a gender and economic empowerment specialist. So I was working with women also to say, how can we get women to move from the traditional vocationals, the hairdressing, it's really great, the catering, but to also move into motor mechanics. What are the barriers that make women not be able to be in those areas? So my role was to really work with if women want to start mechanical engineering, for example, spray painting, how do we make sure that that environment is conducive, issues around harassment within the workplace. And sometimes there wasn't just any infrastructure or support for young women who wanted to go into mainly male-dominated vocations. So I really enjoyed that, but it was mostly the life skills for me. Just working with young people who come and, sometimes really feeling hopeless. They've done everything, but, we are getting them involved in the community. We are giving them skills. We are linking their skills with companies and with organizations that would sort of like give finance for them. They were starting their businesses, being mentored in those businesses and then flourishing. So just seeing that value chain and working was very empowering. And then I moved to Kenya and I joined Femnet. Femnet is one of the most amazing robust women's rights organizations. It's a network with over 800 members across the African continent. So we are in all the 55 countries, but we do a lot of policy and a lot of advocacy work in different thematic areas, in climate justice, economic justice, in ending violence against women and girls, ending harmful traditional practices, sexual reproductive health and rights, and sexual reproductive health justice, as well as transformational leadership. So I've been leading this organization I've been director for 3 years, but I joined 3 years prior as program manager. So that has been my journey. But in between, I did a lot of consultancies within Southern Africa, East Africa, as well as globally as well. I sit on the guiding group for She Decides, which is a movement, a global movement promoting sexual reproductive health and rights, in particular comprehensive sexuality education, but also the rights and access to free and safe abortion. I also have been doing recently some work and some learning on feminist foreign policy, so working with governments which have put in a feminist foreign policy and what does that look like, and really exploring what would that also look like for African governments as well. And I've been doing a lot of work around the nexus between economic justice and climate justice. A lot of work also on economic justice really stands out in our work, where we started what we call the African Feminist Macroeconomic Academy, which brings together feminist activists, economists, women in the media, civil society organizations, where we are looking at macroeconomics. And this is something that we find a lot of organizations, even women's rights organizations, shy away from looking at issues around macroeconomics with a feminist lens. So we find a lot of work is on micro work, access to finance, financial inclusion, which is really important, but there are also issues around the debt, issues around trade, issues around financialization, monetary sovereignty, issues which really affect women's rights, even the mama boga who will be selling, issues around tax justice. So that has been the work where we are trying to have a cadre of women's rights activists and activists within civil society who can really influence policies to respond to issues that affect women. So that's a lot of work that I've been doing, and yeah. Some of the challenges that I face is when you self-identify as a feminist, there are so many misconceptions. You get a lot of attacks. Oh, you are the women who hate men. You are the women who are destroying families. But it's absolutely not that. It's actually fighting for the rights of women and for equality and for the realization that, the world has been structured in a very patriarchal manner, which is very detrimental to society. We need equality in society. We need to recognize that women also have a right to education, they have a right to resources. Women being empowered are not taking away or emasculating men. No, it's because we have a whole population who have so much to contribute, but in most cases our policies are blind. They actually do not believe that women can do it. So that's what we fight for. It's really fighting for that equality, for that recognition, to say we cannot have parliaments, we cannot have boards of companies, we cannot have decision-making or governance structures, even within the media. We cannot just have all the editors, people who are making decisions, who are all male. They have a certain bias, and even the women who we want to be in those positions, unless they understand that they are in a patriarchal system which was designed to exclude women from the marketplace, which still has a lot of barriers for women to participate equally. So those are some of the challenges that I face. But a lot of also challenges around balancing, when you are a mother, when you are a sister, when you are a colleague, there's just so much demands. But also just understanding that the way the workplace has been designed, it's been designed in a way sometimes which is very extractive, to say you should be working for so many hours without taking consideration that our bodies also need to be, there's the whole, it's a very capitalist way of maximizing efficiency without looking at the care and looking at the human element, to say you need to rest, you need hours, which are conducive. You also need to be able to support. Like if I'm a mother, if I'm breastfeeding, for example, yes, we have gone so much far, but in practice, it's not practiced equally. So for a woman in the informal sector, when she goes on maternity leave, she cannot even afford to go on maternity leave because the state does not provide for her. She's not in formal employment. So she'll work and she'll work and she'll work until she gives birth. And even when she gives birth, she still needs to go to the market. She still needs that income because there's no social security net to support that. So you see, those are some of the barriers where you find as you progress, there are certain expectations for you, and the workplaces have not been designed to do that. When I bring in my children and I'm like, okay, I'm going to pick up my children, they'll be doing homework in my office, people will look at like, why is she bringing children? That's very unprofessional. When I say, listen, I'm having cramps and I'm unable, I just can't work, can I work from home? Huh? She's not working and things like that. So there are a lot of barriers which are there, so you face a lot. So in terms of, I have several mentors. I believe that at certain stages, at certain levels within my journey, I've had different mentors. So I've got different mentors who help me, who coach me, in terms of my position, helping me to be able to run the organization and the network. So they are my mentors. But I also have mentors who come in at different stages just for my sanity. So I have got different mentors. I actually believe that it's important to have different mentors. There are mentors who I might not even have their, they might not even know me, but I follow them, they mentor me with the work that they do. Because I believe having a mentor sometimes leads to sort of like, you end up idolizing that person, but I think being open to several mentors. And I believe that mentors are not just elderly people, so I totally and respect and love my elderly mentors. We call them in the feminist lingo witches, but also I also have spiritual mentors who help me in my spiritual journey. I have mentors who are even younger people. I love being mentored by the young people because I realize that with the whole Gen Z, with the whole digital, there's no way I can survive unless I have young people who actually tell me, who lead me, who help me. So I have so many mentors. My sisters, my family have also been my mentors who will tell me the ugly truth, the things that I don't want to hear. So I feel also those are mentors. As director for Femnet, I always feel that every day we wake up and we hear news that maybe, for example, there's going to be more commitment or political will for the 2/3 gender rule, like here in Kenya. For me, that's always like an achievement, like pushing for that, not relenting, despite everything. So some of the key achievements have, I mentioned the school, the academy, the African Feminist Macroeconomic Academy. I really feel that has been a great achievement. I feel also that we've done a lot within the region in terms of pushing for policies, in particular pushing for implementation of Maputo Protocol, which is the African Protocol on the Rights of Women and Girls. So that has been one of our major achievements, convening. As Femnet, we have convening power where we have brought women together to review progress of the Beijing Plus 25. And I remember in 2019 when we brought the women together, it was the highest number of women who we managed to take to Addis Ababa. And within that, we had women living with disability. We had women who were non-binary, gender non-conforming women as well, who were actually attending the African Union space for the very first time. So I've always thought, for me, those are some of the achievements. But some of the achievements that Femnet has had is to really build a movement of young women activists. We started being very intentional about having young women leading. So young women leading both within the organization. So our Young Women's Program, it's not a program, it's a program where we have really been having young women to stand up for their rights, to speak up, young women to be able to go out there. I think one of the other major achievements is really growing the network. I mean, when I became director, we were focusing, we were not very expansive in terms of the partners, but now the partners have grown. We were very small in terms of our staff. I think we're about 80, 90. Now we're about 42. We are working more across the region. So we have really expanded the portfolio of the work that we do. We also did a new strategic plan, 2020 to 2029. So it's a 10-year strategic plan, which is very bold, calling ourselves a feminist network in itself, but also focusing in terms of looking at our membership, growing our membership, and having that collective action for advocacy. We have done so many achievements. Recently, we're working globally in terms of we realized that it was difficult for us to attend. There's a conference called CSW, the Commission on the Status of Women, which is held every year in New York in March. So this convening brings together all the women from across the world to advance the implementation of the Beijing Platform for Action, as well as the CEDAW, which is the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women and Girls. So Femnet, this year we are really focusing our work on COP27. So COP27 will be happening in Egypt. This is the Committee of Parties on Climate Change. So it's held every year. So this year our agenda is to really push for African women to participate, to have a voice, for shifting the narratives. It's a very scientific convening, but we believe in the people's voice. We believe that women who are experiencing climate change, look at the issues around drought, around nutrition, around migration, around flooding. They should be the ones who should be speaking. They should be the one who should be informing how decisions are made and how the outcome is made. But I think here in Kenya, we do a lot of work with women's rights organizations. We also work with traditional leaders. In the communities, we work with traditional religious leaders on ending harmful traditional practices and ending violence against women and girls. So we've been working a lot. We also work with women in horticulture, in tea farms, a program called Stawisha, where we really want the women to be out there. So Femnet, we are in 12 Mombasa Road in Lower Hill. You can also find us on Twitter at FemnetProg, and just Google Femnet and you'll find us. Thank you. Asante sana.